Let's discuss motor starters. Motor starters are generally required when the motor has a high starting current. This high starting current can exceed the rating of the circuit breaker or cause excessive voltage drop. Motor starters are also needed when the motor needs to be controlled remotely. Starters provide the means to start, stop, and protect the motor from a distance. Another reason to use a motor starter is when the motor needs to be protected from overloads. Starters can trip open when the motor draws excessive current, preventing damage. Finally, some motors need to be reversed, and some starters include reversing contactors to change the direction of rotation. Now let's talk about when motor starters are not required. Motor starters are not required when the motor has a low starting current. In this case, the inrush current does not exceed the rating of the circuit breaker. Motor starters are also not required when the motor does not require remote control. If it can be started and stopped directly from the motor, a starter is not needed. Another situation where a motor starter isn't required is when the motor has built-in overload protection. Thermal overloads or current sensors can provide integrated protection. Lastly, if the motor is not frequently cycled, a motor starter may not be needed, as frequent starting and stopping puts stress on the starter and can lead to premature failure. Let's consider an example with belt drive fans. In the case of 480 volts 3-phase 1.5 horsepower belt drive fans, these often have thermal overload protection built in. If they have a low starting current that is below the rating of a 15 amps breaker and do not require remote control, motor starters are not necessary. In conclusion, to determine whether you need a motor starter, consider the following factors. 1. Starting current of the motor. 2. Control requirements. 3. Protection requirements. And 4. Frequency of cycling.